So the first week of free agency is in the books, and the path to the 53-man roster just got harder for these three Cowboys players. Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Mauricio Rodriguez here at A to Z Sports Dallas. First week of free agency is in the books, and let's be honest, the Cowboys were a little bit busier than we thought they were gonna, and maybe they didn't add a lot of players that are gonna shake up the starting lineup, but they did add 11 outside players. That is including the trades that they pulled off. And that is bound to change some things for the depth chart specifically. Now, again, I don't think they added any star that is going to bench a player on the current lineup. There are some guys with starting potential, and I'm thinking about like Dante Fowler Jr., for example, the defensive end. But I do think these are additions that might get some young players at the bottom of the depth chart into some trouble. I'm talking about training camp battles starting to pick their heads in the horizon. And I've got three players that I believe are going to have to fight hard for that roster spot that are impacted directly by the team acquisitions. Now, I'm going to start with running back Deuce Vaughn. This is as obvious as it gets. The Cowboys signed Javonte Williams. They added Miles Sanders. And simply put, there are more bodies now at the running back position. Deuce Vaughn is in a tricky situation where he's still exciting and he's still a player you want to buy into, but we've seen multiple years now from him where that step, he hasn't taken it. He hasn't taken that second-year jump, right? That third-year jump. Now, Deuce Vaughn has this little struggle about the size where the pass protection is a question mark. The pass catching he's a dynamic player with the ball in his hands, but what does the catch radius represents for him? Because it's obviously not a very large radius. And you get a Javonte Williams into the door, and this is a guy that is seen as a third down back, that is seen as someone that will make the roster because of what he can do as a protector, because of what he can do as a pass catcher. So overall, this doesn't feel great for Deuce Vaughn. He has a chance at making the roster. Do not get me wrong, especially with Connor Riley, who was the former offensive line coach and offensive coordinator over at Kansas State, joins the Cowboys' offensive line coach, and there's a connection there. He might benefit from it, but right now, you're going to get Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders. You're likely drafting a running back in the top 3 rounds of the upcoming NFL draft. It's not boding well for Deuce Vaughn, especially when you add Hunter Lipke into the mix, because you might be talking about a 3 running back group with a fullback. Just the math isn't in favor of Deuce, and he's going to need a strong training camp. Next name on the list is wide receiver Jalen Brooks. The Cowboys did not or have not yet made a splash at the wide receiver position. Stephon Diggs is still available. Amari Cooper is still available, but I don't think the Cowboys are going to make such a big move, quote unquote big. But they did sign Paris Campbell. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Campbell, he is a former second-round draft pick that hasn't panned out in the NFL, in large because of the injuries that he's had to face. However, if healthy, he's got some talent, and Campbell is going to be somebody that come training camp might start making a name for himself as long as he stays healthy. But I look at the Cowboys wide receiver room, and it is true they need a strong number 2. I don't think that's what Campbell would be. He would be a bottom of the depth chart kind of guy. So even Jalen Tolbert, I wouldn't put below him. I wouldn't put Jonathan Mingo below him, not even because of my own opinion of Mingo, but I don't see the Cowboys ignoring the fact that they gave up a 4th rounder to get him. But Jalen Brooks, he might be in that shopping block as a result of the Paris Campbell signing, and he's somebody to watch out for. He's going to need another strong training camp. And then last on the list, linebacker Damone Clark. Clark has had a little bit of a crazy story since he arrived at Dallas with the injury thing, the herniated disc. He had fusion surgery, which the Cowboys recommended, and they ended up drafting him in the 5th round of the NFL draft. Well, Clark started 17 games for the Cowboys in 2023, but as soon as Mike Zimmer walked into that door, he ended up being someone with a 15% defensive snap count. Matt Eberflus comes into town, and I don't think that benefits him either, because the Cowboys have added Kenneth Murray in a trade. They've added Jack Sanborn, and suddenly you have those two along Maurice Leofau and the Marvin Overshown, the likely starters when healthy, especially in Overshown's case. And suddenly it's a little bit crowded at the linebacker position for the Cowboys. And I think Clark is at risk of just not making the 53-man roster at this point. He could save himself through special teams, but Jack Sanborn and Kenneth Murray are going to make that task fairly complicated. Now, of course, all of this will be decided on the field, but when you add 11 players to the team, there are going to be some quote-unquote losers out of every transaction. So these are mine, and I'll keep you tuned. We're going to say that again. Ultimately, these players are going to fight for roster spots on the field, and that's what will determine who stays, who's out. But here at A to Z Sports Dallas, we'll keep you updated with more.